We have a 3-time award-winning Nagios MVP presenting right now. How about a nice big round of applause for Eric Loyd?
Thank you. So for those of you manning the cameras, I like to walk, so keep up. I have learned something in the, this is now my 5th, I think, conference that I've been at. And I have learned something, and that is that I should try the next time to go before Seamus does, because half the things I'm going to talk about you will have already learned in his talk. And if you're wondering about the sunglasses, I'll get to that in a minute, but it's keeping my hair back. And lastly, man, I should have thought of this too. So Vivian, if you saw Vivian's talk earlier, she had 7, some people say 8 cats in her presentation. I only have 1, so I feel a little cat deprived. So what are we going to do here? Or rather, what about me? Sorry, we'll get to what are we going to do in a minute. You can read. Oh, wait, I do need to update this, though. Received another MVP award win in 2025. I've been around Nagios for a while, and actually it's been 10 years now. So in 2015, we created EverWatch Global. We are a Nagios partner. We are a 100% pure play Nagios consulting company and reseller. So if Nagios, the software, were to disappear off the planet tomorrow, we would all be broke and out of a job. So please keep it up and keep buying licenses, please. That's what we need. I am a long-term IT professional. I have started a number of businesses, one of which was EverWatch, although I am not the boss. I am a musician and an astrophotographer. And let's see, where are we going to go from here? Oh, speaking of astrophotography. So this is a blurry picture because it looked better that way of my backyard observatory with a couple of telescopes in it, which is really cool because I can just go out anytime I want, open the lid, and take pictures for the night and create some really cool astro images. This is Space Cat Mac. And Space Cat Mac is responsible for keeping the mice out of the observatory. And he really likes to sit on that ledge in the barn. What are we going to do? Oh, wait. We're going to go down memory lane. 2012 was the first conference I spoke at. And this is me. All right. Thank you. 2013 is the second conference I spoke at. And this is me. I know, right? OK. 2014, that's me. Thank you. And 2015, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here, but apparently I talk with my hands. So when I was going back and looking for these pictures, it's kind of funny, it's weird in a way, but I went through all of the Nagios Flickr stream photos to find the ones I was looking for. Everybody is doing something like this, and I feel like I should take all of those and make a quick little 15 frame per second video of just everybody's hands as they talk with their hands, but we're going to skip that today. Josh, are you in the room? Damn. This was my 2014 Nagios watch. This is my 2015 Nagios watch. Same watch. This is the big Twitter board in 2015 that had my Nagios watch on it. And this is my 2025 Nagios watch, which you can all see live right here. If Josh were here, I would surely be getting bad looks from him, but he's not. So what are we going to do? We're going to have a very brief overview. Hopefully it's a review for most of you on the Nagios XI API. From that, we are going to take a look at making a command line version of what you see when you go to the Nagios like host or status page in the GUI, except we're going to do it at a command line. Then we're going to talk about some automated federating capabilities with Nagios XI core asterisk. When I came up with this talk back in, I don't know, when did you guys decide to do this? March, April, whatever it was. When I first learned that there was going to be the conference, I'm like, this is what I'm going to talk about. And then 2 months later, you said, we're going to release Nagios Modgearman. So Nagios Modgearman, I am extremely happy to hear and see. It kind of gets rid of some of this, but we'll come back to it because it's still cool. And you could do it with any version of Nagios. It doesn't have to be the latest version. We're then going to talk about some self-aware Nagios XI services, and this is where we get to the seriously advanced XI configuration stuff. Magic will happen here. This is the Western Veil Nebula, also known as NGC 6960. This is 18 hours of imaging from that backyard observatory. Remember that, there'll be a quiz later. No, there will not be a quiz later. So the Nagios XI API, and now I remember, Seamus, what it was that I needed to correct in my presentation is, have you ever actually clicked the help icon in Nagios XI? Because if you have, then you would have seen this. And if you click on the help, you get documentation. And that documentation includes the API docs. So if you ever need to know how to run Nagios XI APIs, you don't have to query the universe, Google. You just have to click that question mark and actually read these docs. They are up to date with whatever version of XI you're running, and they are really good docs, especially if you know how to read API calls. Might be obvious, but I'm going to state this. You need to have a user who is configured to use the API. Otherwise, this will be a very short exercise. The API is granted by having an API key in the user's entry in User Manager. I think I got a picture of that later. Given an API key for a user, and presumably that user has access to the things that you're going to look at, then you could do all kinds of fun stuff from Bash, fill in the blank, Python, Perl, all the other P languages, Gust, Rust, Go, Node, whatever it is you want to write in, make the equivalent of a curl request, and you are now talking to Nagios XI's API. The really cool thing about the API is there's a objects, a config, a system section to the API. I'm not going into the API here, I'm just letting you know it exists. And basically what these things are is the system section is going to tell you what's happening on your machine today. Think host status, service groups, things of that nature. The config reference pages will tell you how to do things like I want to add a host, or I want to add a service group, or whatever inside of Nagios XI. Follow the instructions there. You can effectively automate your adding and removing and updating hosts and services within XI. Last one, the system references things like I want to add a user. Or, actually, I'm not really sure where this one fits in, but you can get your state history, for instance. So if you want to look back in time, get that information outside of Nagios and not have to rely on the RRD tables that are inside of Nagios and MRTG, that was a long sentence, then you can grab that as JSON data out of the API and do what you want with it from there. The API is extraordinarily powerful, and you need to know how to use it if you're going to do any way cool, fun stuff with XI. So the cool thing about this is once we do some of this stuff, oh, wait. I'll wait till he's done typing.
Sorry.
It's
My
okay.
presentation follows right after this. I realized I forgot something, and I didn't because of what you're covering.
I'm talking here, Aaron. Come on. There are some very esoteric things that the API cannot do yet. For instance, it cannot acknowledge a problem, which is, I don't know, is that a big deal? What is if you want to be able to automate your problem acknowledgement, I guess, but you could always delete the object and not have to worry about it, so bring it back later when you're ready. At any rate, this is the North American Nebula, NGC 7000, so named because this looks like Mexico, this looks like North America, the United States, and this looks like the Gulf of whatever it's called today. That's about 12 hours of imaging time with the big white telescope that was in my observatory. Now that we all know how to use the API, let's go make a command line version of our graphical user interface. Or, optionally, there we go. So we're going to leverage that API to get all the status information we want from your crappy hotel hotspot. How do we do this? We start with a Nagios user who has at least read access to everything that you want to look at. It's kind of a given. You need that, or this is, again, a short conversation. You need to get the API access activated for that user. You need to get their key. We talked about all this a moment ago. You need some stuff that you want to have show up in the output. Typically, that's going to be your services, or maybe you limit it based on service group, or if we're talking hosts, host group, whatever. You need some stuff in your Nagios server. Again, it's obvious, but let's make sure it's out there. You need some software, at least for the way that I was doing this. You need some software on the machine that you're using to query the API. So this is not stuff you need to install on your Nagios server. This is stuff you need to have on your client, whether that might be your Nagios server, but it doesn't have to be. So we're going to use curl in a bash script, and we're going to use a tool called JQ, which is a JavaScript query language, or a processor, parser, whatever the word is. If you've ever, or not JavaScript, JSON, thank you. Whoever said that, speak louder next time. I am getting older. I'm optionally suggesting a utility called CVS tool because the version of the API utility that I wrote can spit out CSV, there we go, I'm also dyslexic, CSV files, and this makes it easy to put them in nice columns on your screen. So if we get all this stuff installed and we build a piece of machinery that goes and does this after we have our API access, this is where this slide went. I wondered why it wasn't there earlier. I'm an admin, I can see everything. I have an API key, which means I can talk to the API. And I have an email address. If you have any questions, that's me. It'll come up later. Remember, the name of my cat, Mac. There will be a quiz later. Let's go take a look at what we do when we grab that API and we query for host status. And let's pretend we maybe did some filters. And then we're going to pull some specific columns out of that JSON data. So we're going to parse it with JQ to say we want to look at host name, current state. Maybe we want to look at last check. Maybe we want to look at the output. Whatever. Just pretend you've got access to all those fields that you would normally have access to, except they're in JSON data. And so JQ is your tool for pulling them out of there. Maybe we don't want all of that host data. We just want the stuff that's broken. So we're going to filter based on current state. And we're going to say current state not equal 0. So now we're going to get, for those of you that are plugin savvy, the exit code from your plugin is going to be a 0 or a 1 or a 2, or optionally some random number which is irrelevant. 0 means OK, at least for a service. 1 means it's in a warning state. 2 means it's critical. So if we filter our JSON data to say I'm only interested in things that are not 0, that means that it's a 1 or a 2, so it's a warning or a critical state. Things are a little bit different for hosts, but the same basic thing applies. We're going to flip this stuff into a comma separated value so we can have a CSV out of it. We're going to parse that with CSV tool, optionally. And then we are going to put that into our SSH command, and we are going to blast that off. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. We're going to have a GUI that's a text-based thingy, which means now we can cron the son of a bitch and send it to our IIT director every 30 minutes so they can have their special report. And this is what it'll look like. This is hosts for a real client. Host names and addresses have been changed to protect the guilty. As you can see, we have 5 hosts. We have some status data about what that host is currently in terms of state. I picked a client that never has criticals. They always have, well, this is hosts. So anyway, they're down. These hosts are busted. This is when we last checked it. This was how many attempts we're going to do for normal and retry intervals. Max number of checks, and then I chose to look at the command that's executed to check that host, not the output. The output's going to be something like host not pingable, translate to whatever the appropriate tool is. I'm more interested in knowing how is that host actually being checked. So in that API call, when I get that service check information back, part of the JSON data is what was the check command that was used to create this host check. I'm a smart systems administrator who knows Nagios, and I know what these things mean, so that can add some value to me other than just host unreachable. Maybe, maybe not. If I look at services on this machine or these machines, again, names and stuff have been changed to protect the innocent, but these are real services. Same basic thing, service on host, whatever, is in state this thing. You'll notice we do have some criticals, that's the 2s. And we have this unknown, which is a state 3. State 0, OK. State 1, warning. State 2, critical. Anything else is an unknown. So when you see that orange thing in your Nagios XI status report, that's because your plugin returns something other than 0, 1, or 2. The last time it was checked, I ran these checks in May. Oh my God, it's been a while. Anyway, so what attempt is it? What's our retry intervals? What's our max check attempt? So hopefully these numbers at least match. Yeah, good. And then this, I chose looking at the output, because that's more meaningful in this context than the check command. So we've got some things where they plugged out. We've got some stuff that returned data, but we don't like that data. And we've got something which apparently that service is not either running. I cut it off, sorry. It's either not running or it's not returning the data in the way we expect it to, so we get that unknown. This is our text-based version of the GUI for our Nagios host and service status. You can do what you want when you figure out how to run that API command, but once you get that, you're just parsing JSON data, and you can parse it, or you feel like you want to parse it. This is the Whirlpool Galaxy, M51. The whole thing is the Whirlpool Galaxy, even though there's two galaxies, one's being sucked into the other. This was 24 hours of imaging time from two different telescopes that I used. One is about this big, and one's about this big. And I combined the data, and it chewed through it for like 6 hours on my computer before it gave me this image. Cool. Let's talk about automated federation. So, when it absolutely positively must be done without human intervention at all times, day and night. Federation, quickly, everybody knows what federation is in the Nagios world? Raise your hand if you don't know what federation is. So, okay. Federation is I have a Nagios server that knows things, and then I have Nagios servers that do things. Today, we would say install Nagios mod Gearman. And now the thing that knows things is your Nagios XI, and then this isn't quite accurate, don't quote me, but it will tell those workers what to do. It's actually the other way around. The workers ask the XI box what to do, and then they do it, and then they report back data, and it's this wonderfully fun thing. But we're going to do it without mod Gearman. Love that vodka. Here's what you'll need to do Eric's version of automated federation. You'll need a Nagios XI server configured with your hosts passively, or hosts and services passively configured, because we are going to have our remote Nagios core workers return data back to our Nagios XI box. This doesn't have to be, well, actually, yes. The box that knows things in this context needs to be a Nagios XI box. The box that does things, I guess it could be an XI box, but you're probably going to do core. You need some decent knowledge of the Nagios XI API. Congratulations, we just covered that a moment ago. You're all experts now. You'll get a badge later. You will need some hosts in a host group. We're going to call those host groups. We're going to assume in this context that you have a centralized Nagios XI server, and you have, just pretend, geographically separate areas that you need to monitor. So you put a core box in there, and we're going to call them Site 1, Site 2, whatever it is. And we're going to create host groups for all the hosts that are in those sites. Those host groups are going to have hosts in them on the Nagios XI box. The Nagios core box is going to query the API. It's going to ask for its pre-configured host group name. It's going to get that list of hosts. Rather than continuing to ask Nagios XI how those hosts are configured, we're just going to create a template. We're going to make it very simple, and now we're going to feed those host names into a template. We're going to use potentially a service template as well if we're going to do services. And then we're going to install some software on our Nagios core box, curl, and JQ, because we need to get the thing, and then we need to process the thing. You can do what you want with curl or whatever, but curl's the easiest, and we just splat this through a shell script, basically. Let's automate some stuff. So the Nagios core box at site X calls the API on the XI box and says, I need to know all the hosts that are in site X host group. You're going to get each host. You're going to loop through it. This is just a shell script on your core box. Your shell script or fill in the blank script is going to loop through that list of hosts and do a sed or whatever to say, here's my template, and I'm going to put the name of the host into that template, and I'm going to create a Nagios core configuration file. Let's move on. If we need to do services, we're going to do that too. Then we're going to move on to, said that wrong. We're going to pull the service information from Nagios, and then we're going to find all of the services on these hosts that were in our site group, because that JSON data contains, here's the host name and the service description. Well, now we know the names of the hosts that we're interested in. Let's pull the service description. We're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to pull some very specific fields out of the JSON data. We're not going to 100% recreate that service. We're only going to get the good parts. Those are things like check interval, retry interval, max attempts, things like that. Most importantly, the service description and the command line. The goal here is, oops, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to do this again. Site Y is going to do its things, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to reload our Nagios core box, and we're going to have our Nagios core box configured to send things back to our XI box via NRDP. And now we have a XI box that knows things, configurations, and we have a core box which knows its host groups that it's responsible for. This sounds a lot like Maud Gearman, if you know Maud Gearman. It queries the API and says, I need to know all the hosts that are in this host group. And then it says, I need to know all your services. You can get fancy with this, and you can say, I only need services in this host group, but if your services and host groups aren't connected, it's just easier to read the services, pull the ones that match for your hosts that are in your host group, kind of dumb it down and recreate those services on your core box, reload your core, and now you are monitoring the stuff that your XI box told your core box to monitor. This is the Elephant Trunk Nebula, IC 1396. Because this is part of a larger complex of interstellar molecular clouds called IC 1396. Moving on. Self-aware services, or $1 magic happens here. So before I continue, if I just said, is everybody aware of how shell substitution works? Raise your hand if you don't. How about command execution substitution? Raise your hand if you don't know how that works. Cool. One person. Thanks, Seamus. I got to kick you out now. So, no, well, this is like, to use a word, this is the core functionality of what we're going to talk about for the rest of this talk. So if I am a Unix kernel and somebody says, go run a command, df, ls, reboot, whatever it is, I'm forking a process, that process executes, and when it terminates, the result code of the most recently run piece of that process gets returned as the exit code. If there's some output printed, that comes back to me as well. You do this all the time when you write shell scripts, and you say, I love the superfluous cat command, cat file space tail -1 to get the last line of the file, and then you pipe that to awk with some fill in the blanks to get the fields you're interested in, and then you want the output of that command to be the value of a variable. What do? You put it in backticks. That's the old way, right? We put it in backticks, and now the output from that command within backticks becomes the value of the variable. The adds one character to your shell script way of doing it is to say, I want to put it inside of a $, parentheses, $. But wait, Eric, there's $2 there. Well, why is that? So what we're going to use to do this is either an incredibly narcissistic, megalomaniac desire to make things as difficult as possible for the next person who comes after you and wants to try to read your Nagios config files, because they are going to be ugly after we get done. Or you need to have this almost Zen-like desire to create service descriptions that actually tell the check command what to do. So who was it that was talking about this before yesterday? And I don't remember. Somebody. I apologize. If you're in the room, if you're watching, or if you're looking later, if you know who you are, please email me, and I'll go back and I'll edit this video, and I'll do one of those really awkward audio inserts. But somebody was talking about, well, Michael Belleroux, there we go, was talking about using custom host macros to be able to insert things into your check commands so that they change based on what host is being used. We're going to go a step farther. We're going to get freaky with this stuff. We need to make one change to our nagios.cfg file. If you've never putzed with your Nagios CFG file, you are missing out. There is a variable we can enable. If it's not already there, you're going to add this line. You're going to set enable environment macros to the number 1. This tells Nagios that any time it executes one of these shell commands, it execs something at the system level, which basically means plugins and event handlers, short version. Every Nagios variable is available to that process as a shell environment variable. So instead of passing in 16 different Nagios variables, $ service description, $, host address, $, whatever, $, those are just all available. And they are available through the magic of shell substitution and an enormous number of $. So let's obfuscate some stuff. I used XI because I did. Doing this in Core Configuration Manager. You can do this with straight core as well. This is going to rely strictly on the magic of shell substitution. This is not an API thing. This is not an XI thing. That rhymes. We're going to create a custom plugin, effectively, that is going to be able to parse all of these variables that Nagios is going to spit out into our environment. And when they get spit out, like if we're all familiar with $ service description, $, we will actually have an environment variable called Nagios _ service description. So now our shell process has 65,000 variables that are all of those variables that Nagios knows about. I called my plugin env because it's messing with environment variables, and it is very convoluted. I created a service template that I named checkdisk:"disk warn crit." I used that service template to create a service called disk usage on /home 8090. I think we're all smart enough, and I think maybe we're above the food coma from lunch that we can still figure out where this is going. This is the name of the disk I want to check. This is my warning and my critical threshold. I am going to set my check command to this. I'm going to let that sit there for a moment. It is color-coded for my convenience, not yours. So we're presuming this is going to be an NCPA check because it is. So we're running the checkxi NCPA plugin. Everybody's familiar with check command syntax, I hope. Otherwise, you probably shouldn't be here. The parameter we're going to pass in next is this -t, and then $, parentheses, $user1 $/env space capital N, capital T. We're going to do the same thing again with a different parameter, minus capital P, $, parentheses, $user1 $/env space. You can read. Then we're going to do this again with a -m. This looks a lot like it might be an NCPA API endpoint. Ooh. Except halfway through, we change to $, parentheses, $user1 $env minus capital F1 minus P parentheses. And then we do something weird with -w. That probably is a warning. And -c, which is probably a critical. And then we do this wackadoodle thing where we pass arg8 as the last argument to our command line. Let's unpack this amazing command. Here it is again, in case you forgot. This part, this -t says I want to go, remember we're talking about a check _xi _ncpa check, so in that command definition, -t is, say it with me, the NCPA token. So this is going to translate into looking in those environment variables for one called Nagios _NCPA token, which we have set as a custom host variable via templates on all of our hosts. Honestly, the way I have my code written, if that doesn't exist, then this goes into some undeterminate state and it will probably fail. There's probably ways to fix that. But short version, the stuff in blue says, tell me what your NCPA token is for this host based on a custom host macro defined for that host. Next up, stuff in yellow. What's the -p in an NCPA is the NCPA port. By default, 5693. We all got that memorized. And it looks for a host macro called NCPA host port, which gets translated into an environment variable called Nagios _host NCPA port. And if it's not found, this program defaults it to 5693. Special case for our NCPA ports. My macro names meaning the NCPA host token and the NCPA port token, or variables, were design choices by me when I created this program. This is not like you have to call them this or whatever. Once we get our token and our port, we're going to go grab our API endpoint. This is the fun one. I probably should have put this up there. Remember, the name of our service check at this point is checkdisk:/home 8090. This is a very, very, very special argument selector within my EMV program, which says, Eric does a lot of things which are going to be something, 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 : field, field, field. So what this does is it says, I want to look at the first, that's this one, of the last 3 fields separated by spaces. Check disk, : /home, space 80, space 90. So my last 3 fields, /home, 80, 90. The first of those, /home. I don't remember what the P does. Actually, I do. It translates the slash into a vertical bar so that it makes a valid API endpoint for NCPA. Again, this is all crap that's buried inside of this EMV program. Next up is my warning. Similar things, lose the P, and now I've got F2. So again, check disk : /home 80, 90. So the last 3 fields, /home 80, 90. The second of those is the 80. I'm pulling the warning value straight out of the service description. Imagine what happens when we get to other things. The whole thing that I'm doing here is based on me calling something name of service check : thing warning critical. So we do the same thing with our critical, except now I'm pulling the 3rd field, /home 80, 90. So we can fill in these blanks as follows. This is going to be whatever the NCPA token is on that host via a host macro. This is going to default to 5693. This is going to be pipe home, because we're translating the thing into a pipe. This is going to be an 80, and this is going to be a 90. Once we get all that, we're going to append arg8 to it. Why? Because we can. This is probably, say what you will about all this other crap that's up here, this is the best part. When you send a command to the Linux command line, and I'm going to use a really simple one like head. I want to see the first 5 lines of a file. Now, whoever does that, tail. I'm going to do the last 5 lines of a file, and I do tail -5 file name. What happens? I get the last 5 lines of the file. But there is an argument to tail where you can say -n space number of lines. So if you do tail -5 file name -n 10, that last parameter, the -n 10, will override the 5 that came earlier. And you will now get the last 10 lines of your file instead of the last 5. So this gives us kind of a where is it? This gives us kind of a safety valve inside of our service description where we can add whatever we want, kind of free-form text to our arg8 field, and it will be appended to whatever bullshit this turns into, and it will override whatever came before it in the command line. So this is a way of maybe creating a one-off so that we know if we're checking /home 80, 90, but we want 95 on that one particular one, then we can add, as our arg8, we can add -C95. And that will change our critical from the 90 that it got from the service description to the now hard-coded 95. Do we all get that? Anybody really need me to go through this again? I will. I will torture you all if I have to. You get to design your own version of EMV. You get to decide whatever works best for you. This is just, wait for it. This is just me coming up with an example. I have no idea why that's happening. Is that my cable, your cable? Is it me? You're all welcome to come up on stage with me and huddle around my laptop if you'd like. I want this time back.
So without this plugged in at all, maybe let's see.
Well, this was on when that was off.
Yeah.
It only turns off. This is a one-way street. Well, I'll take it from here. We're almost done. I'm running out of time. We're good. Okay, so remember, this is Eric saying, I got a crazy idea. Let's make self-aware service descriptions. And then I built this to do that. You can do the things you want to do, but here's some things you got to watch out for. Now, be aware of anybody who has crazy API. Oh, wait, no. Be aware of crazy people who have API access. Now, this is not specific to the last thing we talked about. This is just an overall thing. If you give somebody API access, they have API access. They're no longer going through the GUI. They're no longer clicking on things on a web interface. They're just doing stuff. You might want to watch your audit log if you're an enterprise user before you start handing out your API keys. If you are doing Eric's automated federation via API calls, well, we can all read. Remember, the goal here is not to create a simple configuration. The goal is to create a, wait, sorry, am I saying it wrong? Well, the goal is to create, there we go, a simple configuration. We're not trying to get like convoluted, crazy, magic API calls necessarily. We're trying to just say, this host here needs to ask the XI host, what do I need to monitor? And then build some very simple host definitions and some very simple service definitions, go kickstart my core process and go monitor that stuff so I can send stuff back to my XI box. It's rocket science, but it's really more missile science, all right? We're not trying to land on the moon, we're just trying to get to the atmosphere. The goal is to distribute the processing, it's not to simplify your configuration. When we talk about self-aware services, please, God, or whatever it is you pray to, I beg of you, use service templates. Otherwise, you will spend way too much time putting all those $ into your service descriptions and your check commands, as opposed to just your service descriptions. This is key. You saw earlier I said I created a service template called checks a disk, warning critical. Use that. Fill in the blank for whatever your check is. My EMV program does some pretty crazy things. It's not just those last 3 fields. It can pull some other information, but it's there. Also, seek professional mental health, counseling, and please, God, think of the children. Nobody wants to read this shit when you're done with it, but it's there. So thank you. This is the sun. This is 2 images combined. This is the gold telescope that was in my observatory, which takes these fine pictures of the surface of the sun, combined with the white telescope, which takes these sort of more bright pictures of the sun. And this is, if you feel like it, you can download all of those images by clicking that QR code, which I will leave there for a brief moment. The only slide after this is the one that says, any questions? So I'll leave that for a minute, and then I'll switch over to that.
Do we have any questions for Eric?
So then how many macros do you have in your environment with this setup?
The only ones you really need is the service description. You could hard code your token if you want to, for instance. So my EMV file actually has the ability to say, I have a default value. So if I'm looking for the host macro that says, here's my NCPA token, and you didn't give me one, I can default it to something. The only thing that I'm looking at really is the service description, because I'm using the service description as a description of what to monitor. But I can change, so instead of changing the parameters, the arg1, arg2, whatever, of a service description to change my thresholds, I can just create a new service called check disk home 8595, and now my service check will check with 85 as the warning and 95 as the critical. And if I need to do, I don't know, C colon instead of minus or slash home, I just change it to C colon, and my minus P thingy says, oh, he's talking about Linux versus Windows, and I told it how to deal with that. So there really isn't a lot of a lot of macros that it needs. Service description is the way to go. I'm going to flip to this. This is the Northern Lights, by the way, from October of last year. This was 6 images that I took. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is on the southern shores of Lake Ontario, so just a hop, skip, and a jump away. It was a really cool night, and you're all welcome to see that one too if you download those images. This is me, this presentation, my EMV file, which has been bastardized a little bit to protect some code. My API code is out here as well, and if you really want to impress me, go to my website for astrophotography. Any more questions? Yes?
Wait a second.
You gotta get
you on
mic'd,
the
dude. No one's
live
gonna hear
stream.
you.
How you doing, Eric? Based on your experience, and obviously working with Nagios a while, your customers, how many of your customers, just on a percentage, have the skill sets in-house to handle something like this level of advanced configuration for something like Nagios?
One. But I'm not wearing my badge, but that's why it says partner on my badge, because we will happily sell them our brain power to implement something like this. Now, here's a thing I probably should have mentioned. If you decide you're going to do this with especially these self-aware service checks like this, remember, you're going from command definition where you're literally passing in the parameters that you need to making every parameter available as a shell environment variable. It's not like it's a big deal, but it is adding a fair chunk of memory space to that process table that it needs to keep track of all these, even the blank ones, all these macros that Nagios is giving it. So every time you fire off a service check, you're consuming probably, I don't know percentage, I haven't done the numbers, but you're consuming a larger chunk of non-pageable memory when you do that to give that process table access to those variables. If you're firing off 10,000 service checks, you're going to consume a ton more memory than you used to. So this might be something that you're going to do, like maybe it's on the machine that you set and forget more than it's the machine that you have monitoring your major infrastructure. But you can do it. The whole reason that I'm putting this out there is to get you to think about what you can do, not to like necessarily show you what you should do. But if you want to implement this, give me a call, brother, and I will hook you up. There's one in the front here, Paul.
So I have a question about your program. That program is like a plugin that you develop and put it in the libexec folder?
Yeah, the EMV program, yes, you can
Yes.
treat it like a plugin.
And you have all your macros there with the variables that you use in your code?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the macros are defined on your host
Of
and
course,
services,
yeah,
but yes,
the
it
variables
sees
you have
them,
the-
yes.
to assign the macro value.
Yes.
So I don't see the need to do that, probably because I don't have like a really big environment. We only have just a few hosts, like 500 hosts and 1,800 services. But I would like to see why using this form of managing macros instead of the typing the $sign and name of the macros.
So when you do a macro on a host that says, I want to use this value for a service check on the host, that macro on that host is going to apply to every service check that you run. So I'm only talking about a disk check here. But pretend you need to check to see if an HTTP port is open. And maybe you're not running port 80 everywhere. You've got 80 here, 81 here, 8080 over there, 443 over here. If you did that with a host macro, you'd have to have an individual host macro for all of those different combinations, but you'd have to also tie them back to the service somehow so the service knows which host macro to use. With this, you can just name your service check Apache port 80. And with my code, you could just say, get the last number on the line and use that as the port number that I want to check. So it's the same check command, whether I'm checking port 80 or port 81 or port 443 or whatever, because the check command takes the the service description that was passed to it, parses it using command substitution. I didn't mention, by the way, the reason for the $2 signs is because Nagios will strip the first one as a special character. So you put $2 signs in to make sure that it gets past the shell properly. So the shell actually executes the command, which is the env command, gets the output, and brings it back into Nagios to replace the variable value. So that's why there's a fuck ton of dollar signs. But the end result is literally you have a service check, a command definition for your service that says all that blue and yellow and whatever stuff that I had for a disk check, but I can say check home 8090, check /boot 9095, fill in the blank file system, fill in the blank warning, fill in the blank critical for 5,000 different disks if I want to. They're all going to use exactly the same command definition, same service check, and there's no host macros that I need to define to do it because it's all coming from the service description itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. If somebody really wants to see this like as a live demo kind of thing, I didn't put it up here because I knew I'd run out of time, but disks, CPU warning thresholds, kind of any of that sort of base systems management stuff, this is perfect for that because you can fine tune for a particular machine just by changing the name of the service description for that machine.
And so doing it that way, what is the difference between doing it that way and just using the arguments to set your thresholds?
That means you have to go and change your arguments if you want to change your thresholds. So if you got 80, 90 for my disk check and you decide those are way too low, I don't have to go change my thresholds in my arguments to be 85 and 95, and now they don't match what my service description was because my service description said 80, 90. If I just change my service description, then magically my thresholds will change with it, and now my thresholds match my service description because that's where they get derived from. This is not like a you should do this. This is a you could do this, and maybe it might be useful. So it's like a really wackadoodle approach. But I'm hoping what it does is let people see you're not limited to just saying text, 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 text in your Nagios configurations, be they in core config or in a Nagios core configuration file. You could put a couple dollar signs and some parentheses around something, and now whatever's in the middle of that gets fired off to a subshell. The output of that subshell comes back and gets replaced in that section of your configuration. You could just as easily go ping Google and parse whatever the last ETA or round trip time for Google ping was and use that number for some thing in your definition if that's something that means anything to you. But yeah, I don't want to make it sound like this is what you should be doing instead of command arguments, but it is definitely a way to say, I just want to manage my service descriptions and have my service descriptions sort of become my command definitions and my my thresholds, so I don't have to like keep those things in sync or have multiple copies or whatever it is. Does that help, or does that make it worse?
So as you probably know, we originally used to have the thresholds within the service description, and then we also had them as the arguments until we then had to start changing them and had to change both.
Exactly.
So that was sort of why I asked that question.
Now you only have to change the service description, and everything just flows downhill from there. Assuming you use Eric's bastard version of env. Anything else? Because I know the natives are getting restless.
Josh, do you have a question?
Are you the 4-time MVP award-winning Eric Loyd?
Oh, geez, I don't know. Ask me next year.
Could you go over that dollar sign thing one more time?
Yeah, it's right back here. Actually, I think, Josh, you may have missed it.
Josh missed a slide that you called him out
there's
on.
a slide here at the beginning for Josh. Might be faster to just start over. There we go. All right. So there's me, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. Eric talks with his hands. We were all there. And then there's the 2014 Nagios Watch. There's the 2015 Nagios Watch. And there's the 2015 Nagios Watch on the Twitter board. And there's the 2025 Watch. What have you got, Josh? I can't see from here.
Go on up, Josh. Show him.
This is the official Nagios Apple Watch face
for the conference.
This is the superior bootleg.
I think, yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Our lawyers will be in contact.
All right, how about another big round of applause for the showman, Eric Loyd.
Where do you want me?
You just watched a presentation from the 2025 Nagios World Conference. If you'd like to learn more about future conferences, go to nagios.com/conference. So many things happen here in person, and we would love it if you visited our headquarters in St. Paul, Minnesota. While you're on our channel, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? So much Nagios content is constantly being created. Thanks for watching.